All right, are you ready to unlock some serious conversational superpowers? You wanted to boost your everyday English, right? Well, we've got just the thing.
Intriguing.
Yeah, it is. It's a sneak peek into a real conversation between two friends, Ryan and Emily. Think of it as our little language espionage mission. Like we're going undercover to steal their best phrases.
I love that analogy. And what's fascinating here is that by observing this natural exchange, we can pick up on so much more than just individual words. Like we can see how those phrases function in real life.
Yeah.
In a real life context, how they create a flow and even how they reveal aspects of culture.
Exactly. It's like we're getting a master class in conversational fluency without even realizing it.
Yeah.
And trust me, some of the phrases they use are so good, you'll want to add them to your vocabulary immediately. Like right off the bat, Emily is helping Ryan with this phrase, let's get the ball rolling. And what strikes me is how casual and effortless it sounds.
Right. It's such a common phrase yet it perfectly captures that feeling of momentum, of moving from a standstill to action. If we look back at the origins of the phrase, it actually comes from the world of sports, specifically croquet and lawn bowling, where starting a game literally involved setting a ball in motion.
Wow. I had no idea. So it's like we're tapping into a whole history of language when we use these phrases. But it's not just about sounding cool, right? There's a practical side to it too. For instance, imagine you're in a meeting and everyone's just sitting around waiting for someone to take charge. Wouldn't "let's get the ball rolling" be the perfect way to break the ice and get things moving?
Absolutely. And that's a great example of how these seemingly simple phrases can actually have a huge impact on the dynamics of a conversation. It shows initiative, leadership, even a bit of confidence.
Okay, that's one phrase down. I'm already feeling more fluent. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Emily throws another gem Ryan's way. Let's circle back on that. It's like, bam, instant sophistication. What's your take on this one?
And the circle back is a brilliant way to navigate those moments when you need more information or time to think before making a decision. It's a subtle art, postponing without shutting down the conversation entirely. And it's incredibly useful in both professional and social settings.
Yeah, I can see that. Instead of just saying, "I don't know," or "I need to think about it," which can sound a bit vague or even dismissive, you're offering a clear path forward. Like, hey, this topic is important, but let's revisit it later when we have more context. It's almost like you're creating a mental bookmark, to remind yourself and the other person that at this point will be addressed. But what I find interesting is the visual imagery of circling back. It's like we're creating a loop in the conversation, ensuring that we don't lose track of important points.
That's a great observation. The language we use often reflects how we conceptualize the world around us. And in this case, the metaphor of circling back suggests a sense of order and completion, a promise that will return to the topic and give it the attention it deserves.
All right. I'm starting to see a pattern here. It's not just about learning the phrases, it's about understanding the subtle messages they convey and the impact they have on the listener. Now, what about those times when someone throws out an idea that's, well, let's just say a little out there? Ember gives Ryan a perfect phrase for that. That's a bit of a stretch.
Yes. That's a bit of a stretch. It's the diplomatic way to call someone out, don't you think? You're expressing doubt without being overly confrontational. It's like saying, I'm not quite buying it, but I'm open to hearing you out.
Yeah, I can see how that would come in handy, especially in delicate situations where you don't want to offend anyone, but you still need to express your skepticism.
Yeah.
It's like walking that fine line between being polite and being honest. But I'm also wondering, is there a risk of this phrase sounding a bit passive-aggressive?
That's an interesting point. The tone definitely plays a crucial role here. If delivered with a sarcastic or dismissive tone, it could certainly come across as passive-aggressive. But if used genuinely, with a tone that conveys curiosity rather than judgment, it can be an effective way to encourage further explanation or clarification.
That makes sense. So it's all about the delivery and the intention behind the words. Now this next phrase is one that I know I'll be using all the time. I'm on the fence about it. It just perfectly captures that feeling of being undecided, right? What do you think?
I agree. It's so much more expressive than just saying, I don't know, or I can't decide. It paints a picture, doesn't it? You're literally straddling a fence, unable to commit to either side. And it allows for a sense of vulnerability, of admitting that you're wrestling with a decision.
Yeah, it's like you're inviting the other person into your thought process, showing them that you're weighing the options carefully. And I think that that level of transparency can actually build trust in a conversation. Instead of pretending to have all the answers, you're being honest about your uncertainty. But tell me, do you think this phrase only works for relatively minor decisions, or could you use it for something more serious?
That's a great question. I think it depends on the context. While I'm on the fence is often used for casual decisions, it can also be used for weightier matters as long as the tone is appropriate. It might even signal a desire for more information or a need for further discussion before making a final decision.
So it's adaptable, just like so many of these conversational gems.
Okay.
Picture this. You're making plans with friends, but you're not quite ready to, commit to a rigid schedule. Emily suggests this phrase to Ryan. Let's play it by ear. What I love about this phrase is its inherent flexibility.
It's such a refreshing alternative to the pressure of having everything planned out perfectly, isn't it? It embraces the unknown, the possibility of spontaneity, and I think that resonates deeply with our human need for adaptability and freedom.
It's like saying, "Hey, let's be open to the adventure, to seeing where the day takes us." And it takes the pressure off, both for the person suggesting it and the person hearing it.
Absolutely. Let's play it by ear implies a shared trust and a willingness to go with the flow, which can be incredibly liberating in our often overscheduled lives.
But I'm curious, do you think there are situations where this phrase might not be appropriate, like maybe in a professional context where clear expectations are crucial?
That's a valid point. While playing it by ear works beautifully in informal settings, it might send the wrong message in certain professional situations where precision and accountability are paramount. It's all about reading the room, understanding the unspoken rules of communication.
So context is key yet again. All right, let's talk about those moments when something completely shakes things up. There's those game-changing moments. And Emily gives Ryan this perfect phrase to describe it. That's a game changer. But what I'm wondering is, how do we know when something is truly a game changer and not just a minor shift?
That's a great question. And it gets to the heart of how we perceive and react to change. I think a true game changer is something that fundamentally alters the landscape, the rules, the entire playing field. It's not just a tweak or an adjustment. It's a paradigm shift.
So it's about the magnitude of the change and its potential ripple effects. Right? It's like in Ryan and Emily's conversation, they use this phrase to describe a new technology that completely revolutionizes their industry. It's not just an incremental improvement. It's a whole new ballgame.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of this phrase. It captures that sense of awe and excitement, even a bit of trepidation that comes with encountering something truly transformative. It signals that we can't just keep doing things the way we've always done them. We need to adapt and evolve.
Wow, that's deep. Okay, moving on to something a bit lighter. We all have our preferences, things we love and things we just can't stand.
Yeah.
And Emily teaches Ryan a classic phrase for expressing those dislikes politely. It's not my cup of tea. Now, I know this phrase is commonly used, but I'm curious about its origins. Is it as simple as just not liking a particular type of tea?
That's what's so fascinating about idioms. Their origins often get lost in time, but they leave behind these intriguing traces of how language evolves. While the exact origin of not my cup of tea is debatable, some believe it stems from the Victorian era in England, where tea drinking was a central part of social life.
So it's like saying, this doesn't fit into my social world, my taste, my preferences.
Yeah.
And I think it's genius how this phrase allows you to express your dislike without sounding harsh or judgmental.
Precisely. It's a gentle way to acknowledge difference without creating conflict. It's a reminder that we can respect each other's tastes even when they don't align with our own. And in a world that often feels polarized, that kind of gentle disagreement can be incredibly valuable.
That's such an important point. It's like instead of arguing at whose cup of tea is better, we can simply acknowledge and appreciate the diversity of preferences. Okay, this next phrase is a bit of wisdom that I think we all need to hear from time to time. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. What I love about proverbs like this is that they encapsulate these universal truths that have stood the test of time.
Absolutely. And this one is all about diversification and risk management, isn't it? It's a cautionary tale reminding us that over-reliance on a single thing can be dangerous. It's like in Ryan and Emily's conversation, they use it to talk about investing. Emily's advising Ryan to spread his investments, not to gamble everything on one stock.
It's about having backup plans, exploring different options, and not putting all your hopes on one outcome. And I think that applies to so many aspects of life, from relationships to career choices to personal goals. But I'm also wondering, is there a downside to this approach? Could too much diversification lead to a lack of focus or commitment?
That's a really insightful question. You hit on a key point. Balance. While diversification can mitigate risk, it's also important to have clarity and commitment to our chosen paths. Perhaps the wisdom lies in finding that sweet spot between spreading our bets and focusing our energy on what truly matters.
So it's not about being reckless or spreading ourselves too thin. It's about making informed choices and having a safety net.
Okay, let's tackle this next phrase, which perfectly captures the duality of life, where things can have both positive and negative consequences. It's a double-edged sword. What I find fascinating about metaphors like this is how they create such vivid images in our minds.
Right. It's like we can almost feel the sharpness of that sword, the potential for both benefit and harm. And I think that image speaks to the complexities of decision making, where rarely is anything purely good or purely bad. There are always trade-offs to consider.
It's like in Ryan and Emily's conversation, they use double-edged sword to talk about social media. It's a powerful tool for connection, but it can also be a source of distraction and negativity. It's all about finding the balance, navigating those inherent contradictions. And I think that's where critical thinking comes into play. This phrase encourages us to move beyond simplistic judgments and to embrace the nuances of any situation. It's about acknowledging that even seemingly positive things can have unintended consequences.
Okay, that's a lot to unpack, but I love how this phrase makes us think more deeply about the choices we make and the potential impact of our actions. Now, what about those times when you need to decline an invitation but don't want to burn any bridges? Emily teaches Ryan this classic, "I'll take a rain check."
The art of the polite decline. This is a great example of how language can be used to soften a potentially awkward situation. Instead of just saying no, you're offering a hopeful alternative, a promise of a future engagement.
It's like saying, "I'm genuinely interested, but the timing isn't right. Let's do it another time." And I think that subtle distinction can make all the difference in maintaining a positive relationship.
Absolutely. It conveys your willingness to reschedule without making any firm commitments, which can be helpful in navigating social dynamics. But I'm also wondering, do you think this phrase only works for social invitations, or could it be used in other contexts?
That's a good question. I think it depends on the relationship and the level of formality. While taking a rain check is perfectly acceptable in casual settings, it might not be appropriate for more formal business situations.
Right. You wouldn't want to take a rain check on a job offer, for example. Context is everything, as always.
Okay, it's starting to sound like a broken record here, but it's true. Context is crucial. All right, let's talk about those moments when our patience wears thin. And something finally pushes us over the edge. Emily gives Ryan this powerful phrase, "That's the last straw." And I have to say, just hearing those words makes me feel a surge of, well, I don't know if it's anger or relief. What do you think?
It's such a visceral phrase, isn't it? It evokes that feeling of reaching a breaking point, of having endured all that you can possibly endure, and it often signals a shift from passive tolerance to active change.
It's like saying enough is enough. I'm drawing a line in the sand, and I think it's interesting how this phrase implies a series of events.
Yeah.
A buildup of frustration that finally culminates in this decisive moment.
Exactly. It's not just a single incident. It's the culmination of many smaller annoyances that finally tip the scales. And I think that's what gives it such emotional weight.
So it's like the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back. Each straw might be insignificant on its own, but when you add them all up, they become unbearable.
And that's why this phrase is so powerful. It encapsulates that sense of reaching a a limit, a threshold beyond which we can no longer tolerate the status quo.
Okay, I'm feeling a little fired up now, but let's try to channel that energy into something positive. How about those times when we need to remind ourselves to slow down and think things through before jumping into action? Emily gives Ryan this gem. Let's not jump the gun.
The voice of reason.
Yeah.
This phrase is all about caution, about resisting the urge to act impulsively. It's a reminder that sometimes the best course of action is to pause, gather information, and consider the potential consequences before making a move.
Yeah, it's like saying, let's take a deep breath, assess the situation, and make sure we're not, rushing into something we might regret later. And I think that's especially important in a world that often glorifies speed and instant gratification.
Right. Let's not jump the gun encourages us to cultivate patience, to value deliberation over haste. It's a reminder that sometimes slowing down can actually lead to faster and more effective results in the long run.
Okay, I'm definitely feeling more zen now.
Yeah.
But life is full of surprises, isn't it? Sometimes what seems like a setback turns out to be a blessing in disguise. And Emily gives Ryan this beautifully optimistic phrase to describe that phenomenon. It's a blessing in disguise.
I love that phrase. It speaks to the power of perspective, of finding the silver lining even in challenging situations. It's a reminder that we don't always have the full picture, and what might appear negative in the moment could actually lead to something positive down the road.
It's like in Ryan and Emily's conversation, they used this phrase to talk about a job opportunity that Ryan missed out on. Initially, he was disappointed, but it turns out that missing that job opened up an even better opportunity for him.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful reminder that sometimes things happen for a reason.
And I think that's a message we all need to hear from time to time. Life is full of twists and turns, and it's often in those unexpected detours that we discover our true path.
So it's not about, denying the pain or disappointment of setbacks, but rather about being open to the possibility that something good might come out of them.
Okay, I'm starting to see a recurring theme here. The power of perspective, the importance of language, and the subtle ways we communicate with each other. Now, what about those times when we're facing a potential problem that's not immediately pressing? Emily gives Ryan this practical phrase, "I'll cross that bridge when I get to it."
Art of prioritization. This phrase is all about managing worry, focusing our energy on what's truly important in the present moment. It's a way of saying, let's not borrow trouble. We'll deal with that. We'll deal with that challenge when it arises. Yeah, it's like acknowledging that we can't solve every problem before it even happens. Sometimes the best approach is to wait and see how things unfold before getting bogged down in unnecessary anxiety. But I'm also wondering, is there a danger in being too passive in this approach? Could we miss opportunities to proactively address potential problems?
That's a great point. It's all about finding that balance between addressing legitimate concerns and not getting caught up in hypothetical worries. Crossing that bridge when we get to it is a valuable strategy for avoiding overwhelm, but it shouldn't be an excuse for procrastination or inaction.
So it's about being mindful, discerning between what we can control and what we can't. And it's about trusting ourselves to handle challenges as they arise. Okay, we're on a roll here, uncovering all these conversational treasures. And this next phrase highlights how drastically things can change. That's a whole different ball game. What strikes me about this phrase is the image it conjures up, that shift from one playing field to another with completely different rules and dynamics.
It's such a vivid metaphor, isn't it? It emphasizes the magnitude of the change, the need to adapt and adjust our expectations, and I think it's particularly relevant in today's rapidly evolving world where we're constantly encountering new challenges and new opportunities.
It's like in Ryan and Emily's conversation, they use this phrase to talk about the transition from high school to university. It's a whole new level of responsibility,
right, yeah.
A whole new set of expectations, and it requires a shift in mindset, a willingness to embrace the unknown.
Exactly. It's not just a continuation of what came before. It's a brand new adventure with its own unique set of rules and challenges.
Okay, I'm getting excited about all the possibilities, but sometimes the decision is so obvious that it requires almost no thought at all. And Emily teaches Ryan this phrase for those no-brainer moments. It's a no-brainer. Now I know this phrase is pretty straightforward, but I'm curious, do you think it's always appropriate to use?
That's an interesting point. While no-brainer is a common way to express the obviousness of a choice, it's important to be mindful of the context. In some situations, it could come across as dismissive or condescending, especially if the decision is actually more complex than it appears on the surface.
So it's like we need to make sure that we're not minimizing someone else's perspective or overlooking potential nuances. Just because something seems obvious to us doesn't mean it's obvious to everyone.
Exactly. It's all about empathy and respecting different viewpoints.
Okay, that's a good reminder to check our assumptions. Now this next phrase is perfect for those times when we need to keep something under wraps. Hush, hush, top secret. Let's keep it under wraps. What I love about idioms like this is how they paint such vivid pictures in our minds.
Right. It's like we can almost visualize something being carefully wrapped up, hidden away from prying eyes. And I think that image speaks to our human need for privacy, for discretion, for controlling the flow of information.
It's like in Ryan and Emily's conversation, they use this phrase to talk about a new job offer that Ryan received. Yeah. He's excited, but he doesn't want to share the news until everything is finalized. It's about being strategic, about choosing the right time and place to reveal sensitive information.
And it highlights the importance of trust and confidentiality. Keeping something under wraps implies a shared understanding that this information is precious and needs to be protected.
So it's about being mindful of the potential impact of our words, of respecting boundaries, and about choosing our words carefully. Okay, this has been an amazing journey so far, and we've only just scratched the surface. I'm already feeling so much more confident in my ability to navigate everyday conversations.
Me too. And what's so exciting is that this is just the beginning. There's a whole world of conversational gems out there just waiting to be discovered.
It's true. There's always more to learn, more to explore, more ways to express ourselves with nuance and clarity. But what strikes me is how Ryan and Emily use these phrases so effortlessly, so naturally. It's like they're not even thinking about it.
That's the beauty of fluency, isn't it? When you've truly mastered a language, the words flow effortlessly, almost instinctively. And I think that's what we're aiming for here, to reach that level of comfort and confidence where we can use these phrases without hesitation, without overthinking it.
So it's not just about memorizing a list of phrases. It's about internalizing them, making them part of our natural vocabulary.
Exactly, and that takes practice, exposure, and a willingness to experiment. It's about immersing ourselves in the language, surrounding ourselves with native speakers, and embracing the inevitable mistakes along the way.
Because mistakes are just opportunities for growth.
Right.
It's like the more we stumble, the more we learn, the more fluent we become.
I couldn't have said it better myself, and that brings me to a crucial point. We've been focusing on the what of these phrases, their meanings and usage, but I think it's equally important to consider the why. Why do these phrases matter? What do they reveal about our culture, our values, our way of thinking?
That's such a great point. It's like language isn't just a tool for communication. It's a window into our collective consciousness. It reflects how we see the world, how we relate to each other, and what we value as a society.
Exactly, and I think that's what makes language learning so fascinating. It's not just about acquiring vocabulary and grammar rules. It's about gaining a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
Okay. I'm feeling a bit philosophical now, but I love how you've connected this back to the bigger picture. It's like learning these phrases isn't just about sounding more fluent. It's about expanding our worldview, about becoming more aware of the subtle ways language language shapes our thoughts and actions.
Precisely. And that awareness can empower us to communicate more effectively, to build stronger relationships, and to navigate the complexities of intercultural communication with greater sensitivity and understanding.
Okay, I'm feeling inspired. But before we get too carried away with our philosophical musings, let's bring it back to our deep dive.
Yeah.
What other conversational treasures are waiting to be uncovered in Ryan and Emily's exchange?
Ready to uncover more conversational gems.
Absolutely. My brain is already buzzing with all the phrases we've explored so far, and I'm eager to add even more to my repertoire.
Speaking of secrets and keeping things hush hush, I noticed Emily used a phrase when talking about not feeling well. I'm feeling under the weather. What's intriguing is how this phrase conveys a sense of not being oneself without being overly dramatic or revealing.
It's a classic example of how language allows us to communicate subtle states of being, isn't it? Under the weather suggests a temporary dip in well-being, a feeling of being slightly off kilter, but without necessarily implying a serious illness. And I think it's interesting how this phrase uses a meteorological metaphor to describe a physical or emotional state.
You're right. It's like our language borrows from the natural world to express those intangible feelings, and it allows us to communicate our need for a little TLC without going into too much detail.
Yeah.
But do you think this phrase is universally understood? Would someone from a different culture necessarily grasp the meaning?
That's a great question, and it highlights the importance of cultural awareness in communication. While under the weather might be widely understood in English-speaking cultures, it's possible that someone from a different linguistic background might not immediately grasp the metaphorical meaning. It's a reminder that even seemingly simple phrases can carry cultural baggage.
Yeah. So it's all about being sensitive to the nuances of language and recognizing that what might be clear to us might not be clear to everyone. Okay, I'm filing that away for a future reference. Now imagine you're discussing plans that are still in flux. Nothing's finalized yet. Emily using this phrase with Ryan, it's not set in stone. What I like about this phrase is its inherent flexibility.
It's a wonderful way to acknowledge that change is inevitable, isn't it? Set in stone evokes a sense of permanence, of immutability. So by saying it's not set in stone, you're creating space for adjustments, for revisions, for the natural evolution of plans.
Yeah, it's like saying, hey, we're open to suggestions, to new information, to the possibility that things might shift as we move forward. And I think that kind of flexibility can be incredibly valuable in both personal and professional contexts. But I'm also wondering, is there a risk that using this phrase might make you seem indecisive or unreliable?
That's a valid concern. It's all about finding that balance between being adaptable and being clear about your intentions. If used excessively, it could certainly give the impression that you're not fully committed to a plan. However, if used strategically, it can convey a sense of openness and collaboration.
So it's about being mindful of how we use language and recognizing that even seemingly innocuous phrases can have unintended consequences.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about those moments when we narrowly escape a mishap. Those heart-stopping, close call situations. And Emily gives Ryan this perfect phrase to describe it. That was a close call. What I find fascinating about this phrase is how it captures that mix of relief and astonishment.
It's a visceral reaction, isn't it? That sudden surge of adrenaline followed by a wave of gratitude for having avoided disaster. Close call perfectly encapsulates that feeling of being on the edge of something dangerous and then pulling back at the last moment.
Yeah. It's like in Ryan and Emily's conversation, they use this phrase to describe a near accident on the road.
Yeah.
Ryan almost collided with another car, but he managed to swerve just in time. It's a reminder of how quickly things can change, how fragile our sense of security can be.
And I think it also speaks to our human capacity for resilience, for bouncing back from those close encounters with danger. Close call acknowledges the threat while also celebrating our ability to to escape unharmed.
So it's a reminder to appreciate those moments of good fortune, those times when luck was on our side, and perhaps it's also a reminder to be more mindful, to pay attention to our surroundings and to make choices that minimize risk.
Absolutely, it's about learning from those close calls and taking steps to prevent them from happening again.
Okay. I'm feeling a surge of inspiration to be more present and aware in my daily life. Now we've covered so many amazing phrases today, and I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed in the best way possible. It's like my brain is overflowing with new vocabulary.
I know exactly what you mean. It's like we've been on a linguistic treasure hunt, unearthing these precious gems of conversation, and the best part is that this is just a small sample of the richness and diversity of everyday English.
It's true. There's always more to learn, more to explore, more ways to express ourselves with nuance and clarity. But what strikes me is how Ryan and Emily use these phrases so effortlessly, so naturally. It's like they're not even thinking about it.
That's the beauty of fluency, isn't it? When you've truly mastered a language, the words flow effortlessly, almost instinctively. And I think that's what we're aiming for here, to reach that level of comfort and confidence where we can use these phrases without hesitation, without overthinking it.
So it's not just about memorizing a list of phrases. It's about internalizing them.
Yeah.
Making them part of our natural vocabulary.
Exactly. And that takes practice, exposure, and a willingness to experiment. It's about immersing ourselves in the language, surrounding ourselves with native speakers, and embracing the inevitable mistakes along the way.
But mistakes are just opportunities for growth, right? It's like the more we stumble, the more we learn, the more fluent we become.
I couldn't have said it better myself. And that brings me to a crucial point. We've been focusing on the what of these phrases, their meanings and usage. But I think it's equally important to consider the why. Why do these phrases matter? What do they reveal about our culture, our values, our way of thinking?
That's such a great point. It's like language isn't just a tool for communication. It's a window into our collective consciousness. It reflects how we see the world, how we relate to each other, and what we value as a society.
Exactly, and I think that's what makes language learning so fascinating. It's not just about acquiring vocabulary and grammar rules. It's about gaining a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
Okay, I'm feeling a bit philosophical now, but I love how you've connected this back to the bigger picture. It's like learning these phrases isn't just about sounding more fluent. It's about expanding our worldview, about becoming more aware of the subtle ways language shapes our thoughts and actions.
Precisely, and that awareness can empower us to communicate more effectively, to build stronger relationships, and to navigate the complexities of intercultural communication with greater sensitivity and understanding.
Okay, I'm feeling inspired, but before we get too carried away with our philosophical musings, let's bring it back to our deep dive. What other conversational treasures are waiting to be uncovered in Ryan and Emily's exchange?
Well, we've talked about handling tricky situations and expressing preferences, but what about those times when you need to offer advice? There's a phrase Emily uses that's perfect for that. Take it with a grain of salt.
Ooh, that's a good one. I've heard that phrase before, but I never really thought about what it means. What's your take on it?
It's a way of saying don't take this too literally, or consider the source. It's a gentle reminder to be discerning, to evaluate information critically, and to not blindly accept everything we hear.
Yeah, it's like in Ryan and Emily's conversation, Emily is cautioning Ryan about some gossip he's heard. She's not saying it's necessarily false, but she's encouraging him to be skeptical and to not form judgments based on hearsay.
Exactly, and I think that's such a valuable skill in today's world where we're bombarded with information from all sides. Taking it with a grain of salt empowers us to filter through the noise, to question assumptions, and to form our own opinions based on evidence and critical thinking.
So it's about being discerning consumers of information, about not taking everything at face value. I love that. But I'm also wondering, is there a risk of being too skeptical? Could we miss out on valuable insights or experiences if we're constantly questioning everything?
That's a great point. It's all about finding that balance between healthy skepticism and open-mindedness. Taking it with a grain of salt doesn't mean dismissing everything outright. It means approaching information with a critical eye and being willing to consider different perspectives.
So it's about being discerning without being cynical. About being open to new ideas while also being aware of potential biases or distortions.
Right.
Now, as we wrap up our deep dives into Ryan and Emily's conversation, I can't help but feel a sense of awe at the power of language. It's like we've uncovered a hidden code, a secret language that unlocks deeper levels of communication and understanding.
I completely agree. And what's so remarkable is that this is just a small sample of the vast and intricate tapestry of everyday English. There are countless other phrases, idioms, and expressions out there, each with its own unique history, meaning, and cultural significance.
It's true. It's like we've only just begun to scratch the surface of this linguistic treasure trove. But what strikes me is how Ryan, who's still learning English, is able to grasp the nuances of these phrases so quickly. It's like he's not just learning the words, he's absorbing the culture behind them.
That's a testament to the power of immersion, isn't it? When we surround ourselves with a language, when we engage in real life conversations, when we allow ourselves to make mistakes and learn from them, we start to internalize the language in a way that goes beyond mere memorization.
So it's about embracing the messiness of the learning process, about being willing to step outside of our comfort zones and to experiment with new ways of expressing ourselves.
Absolutely. And that's what makes language learning such a rewarding journey. It's a process of constant discovery, of expanding our horizons, of connecting with others in more meaningful ways.
I couldn't have said it better myself. So to our listeners out there, I encourage you to embrace the adventure of language learning. Don't be afraid to try out these phrases, to experiment with different ways of expressing yourselves, and to immerse yourselves in the richness and diversity of English.
And remember, fluency isn't just about speaking perfectly. It's about communicating effectively, building connections, and expressing yourselves authentically.
Beautifully said. It's been an absolute pleasure eavesdropping on Ryan and Emily's conversation with you today. I feel like my conversational toolbox is overflowing with new gems, and I can't wait to start using them in my own interactions.
Me too. And as you continue your language journey, remember to stay curious, stay playful, and stay engaged with the ever-evolving world of English.
That's great advice. Yeah. So here's a final thought for you to ponder. How do you think technology, particularly the rise of social media and online communication, is shaping the evolution of conversational English? Are we witnessing the birth of new phrases, or are we losing some of the richness and nuance of face-to-face interactions?
That's a fascinating question. It makes you wonder how the digital age is influencing the way we speak, write, and connect with each other, and it highlights the importance of being mindful of how we use language in both online and offline spaces.
It's like we have this incredible tool at our disposal, this ability to communicate across time and space, but it's up to us to use it wisely and to preserve the beauty and power of language.
Well said. Until next time, keep those conversations flowing, both online and offline, and keep exploring the fascinating world of language.